Make reading easier. That is the heart's cry of so many of our children today that are struggling to learn how to read, and especially those that are labeled with dyslexia. Hello, I'm Jan Bedell, otherwise known as Brain Coach. I'm also the founder and president of Brain Sprints. Wanted to share a little bit of my story because this topic comes very close to home for me. I had difficulty reading when I was a young child. It was very challenging in my classrooms. I felt very self-conscious. I had to have tutors, and my parents were doing everything that they could, and my teachers as well, but I really struggled with reading. One of the things that happened with me is I didn't crawl and creep on my hands and knees and on my belly when I was a baby. I walked at 9 months. So this has to do with organizing your brain for reading. We're going to talk about this, how to organize the pons, midbrain, and cortex of your brain in another segment called Reading Roller Coaster of Dyslexia. So tune into that for another aspect of reading because it's really very complicated. First, we've got to look at the eyes, though. How is the visual function happening? And obviously, that's very important for reading because you have to be able to see it. The acuity is something most everybody is familiar with. The acuity is, can I see up close? Can I see far away? Do I need glasses? That's something that a doctor would look into and help you with. Something that not everybody recognizes is the tracking and convergence aspect of reading. If your eyes aren't working together, moving across the page smoothly and not bouncing back and forth, that has a lot to do with the ability to read, going across a word or across a sentence. Then the convergence, that's the eyes working together, putting the image from one eye directly on top of the other. This is very important so that things don't float on the page and letters look very clear as well. Another area that we're seeing as neurodevelopmentalists with a lot of children that are struggling with reading is their central vision doesn't work well. So that's how you see right in the center. And it's a developmental aspect and it can be worked on and significantly improved over time. But the symptoms of this are sometimes the children skip lines when they're reading. They go from the end of one line and then they can't find their place at the beginning of the next line. Or they leave out little words, or they add parts of words to other words that makes it seem very strange the way that they're reading. This is because they're not seeing right in the center. This is something that happened with me, and I took piano for a little while, but it was very early on that my teacher would say, "Can't you see that just comes down one step?" And I was a very compliant little firstborn child, and if I had known it would, I would have done it. But at home, I could take one hand and go across the page and just glide across so that I could see whether it was going up or down. But when you go into your lesson, you have to have both hands on the keyboard. If the child has any issues in these areas that we've talked about, acuity or central vision or tracking and convergence, this may be the way they see things. And as you can see, it would be very difficult to read accurately, correctly, if this is really what you saw. Well, as we said, reading is very complex, so visual is just one part of it, and being able to see correctly is only one part. Another aspect of reading has to do with auditory processing. And what we're talking about here is holding auditory pieces of information together in a sequence. So the first sound, second sound, and the next sound has to be held together in your short-term memory to be able to get that word out. So many children that have low auditory processing ability struggle especially with phonics. And if you're like most people these days, it seems to you phonics is the only way to teach reading. Well, it is an important way to teach reading, but if your processing is low, it's not an easy thing, and it's very frustrating oftentimes. So we recommend that you get a free test kit from brainsprints.com. Scroll down to where you see the tools, and you'll see free test kit there. And test your child and see where they are. They need at least a 5 working on 6 to handle phonics well. I recommend that you listen to the auditory processing segment that I did because I go into more detail about that. But let's look at what we would need to do if the processing is low. I want you to read this little segment and see if you can read it well. You might try reading it phonetically. Can you do that? No. You may have seen this come around in the emails. Isn't it amazing what our brain can do? That when you see a word, even if the letters are in the wrong place, you can make it out. That's because we are sight readers. Once we know how to read a word, we never sound it out again. Now, I'm not advocating that sight is the only way to teach reading, but when your processing is low, it's a really good way. To build your sight word vocabulary can really help you along the way. So we recommend things like this particular activity, 1,000 words. So you're going to flash the words to the child and tell them what the word is, building that sight word vocabulary while you're working on their processing, and then you'll be able to add the phonics back in. Now, these are the first 1,000 most commonly read words, and will really get them a long way in their confidence in reading as well. If you want real purpose to the flash, we recommend that you use pathway readers and the flashcards that we've developed for each one of the first 3 books. So it has the instructions there on how to do the flash, and what happens is their word recognition improves, their fluency improves, their comprehension improves, and most of all, their confidence. So this is something that I recommend if the child is a little bit older, maybe 7 or 8, and they're struggling, and they don't like those little baby books that typically are part of a phonics program for lower level reading. If they're younger and they're just beginning to read, we like the 3 R's Plus. They're little booklets that are about 12 pages long, and they have 1 or 2 sentences on each page. There's 24 books, and the child gets really excited when they can read a whole book and tell Dad, I read this whole book. There's cards that go with that to help you teach each one of the words that is going to be in the book. The next thing that will really make reading easier is if they're reading, fairly well, maybe 2nd grade level or something like that, you can use what's called echo reading. And echo reading is you read to them and then they read the same thing immediately after you. So whether it's you read a couple of sentences and then they read those same sentences, or if you can go a paragraph or a page, what you're looking for is the child not making more than 2 or 3 mistakes in that amount of reading to be a comfortable place of the echo reading. So you read first, they read the very same thing to you. A lot of people think alternating is a good plan. What we're talking about here is the neurodevelopmental approach of giving input before you ask for output. So we have seen tremendous benefits from this, where their comprehension and fluency, their intonation and expression in reading just takes off. We like this echo reading when they're like 2nd grade, used with the pathway readers. If they're a little bit higher level than that, then the new practice reader, the reading for concepts, and the reading about science is a great tool, and those are graded from about 2nd grade to about 7th grade. So the echo reading is just a dynamic way of helping. Another way of making reading easier is helping with comprehension. And there's something called detailed reading comprehension that is a great tool in this, because they don't have to know a lot of words to be able to practice that comprehension. With this, they read a sentence like this, put a red 0 inside the little truck, and then they see a response card and they do what was in the sentence without looking back is the ideal. So you can see how they have to remember what color it was, what shape do I make, where do I put it, what size was it, and what object. In this program, there's multiple sentences like this. So put a green minus over the big bus might be another one. There's actually 900 sentences in this kit. There's 3 different response cards and 3 sets of words. And there's 450 questions. So after the response card is done, you would say, a sentence might ask, is the green minus over the big bus? And then they have to say yes or no. Another aspect of reading comes from visual processing. This is your visual short-term memory, holding pieces of visual information together. If a child is in preschool and they have a problem with this, they're going to have trouble remembering their numbers and letters and words. And then the problem for older children is going to be in many areas. They're going to have trouble with math and spelling, reading, visual attention, picking up visual information, and oftentimes eye contact. That same test kit that I was telling you about that you get from brainsprints.com, it will have a way to test for your visual processing as well. Man, reading is complicated because it also requires visual discrimination. Now, the difference between how and who, or bog and dog, that fine discrimination is very important too. So if you want to work on that, we have 10 different levels of visual discrimination game. They have cards that you put out from, and you can put out from 6 to 12 cards that look very similar. Then you hold up one large card and they have to find it as fast as they can. There's numbers, and then there's words, and words with different fonts, and even symbols. So look at this for just a couple of seconds, and then I'll give you an example of what it would be like. You look at this, and then you look at all 12 cards and you try to find it. It can be very challenging. It's very helpful in helping reading. Another aspect of reading that we don't have time to discuss today, but will be in the dyslexia talk, is the dominance and storing things in the right place so that they can come back out. I had one mom say that the child would know it one day, and the very next day it was gone. It was like it just disappeared. So that can have to do with dominance, where they're storing information. We have free consultations to help you, direct you to different resources. If you would like to know more about what the neurodevelopmental approach has to offer as far as making reading easier. But we have a neurodevelopmental seminar that's 2 hours long that gives you lots of ways to help the child get their brain more organized so that it works better for them in every area, not only in reading. If there's severe issues that you want some specific help with, we have in-person or video evaluations. There are lots of free articles on different topics of neurodevelopment and making learning easier on our website. We'd already mentioned the free test kits. I have a whole YouTube channel called Brain Coach Tips on YouTube where you can get information. There's also podcasts if you have that preference. I'm doing a number of workshops here on this platform, so you can check those out. And we have a variety of in-home programs. So we train you what to do at home to work on the root cause of these inefficiencies. Don't forget that free consult is available where you can ask the brain coach about your specific situation. And you can always visit us at brainsprints.com. Thanks for listening.